All right, welcome to Hey Kings Connections. I'm joined again by Mr. Jeffrey Jackson with Cropland, sporting his cow chow shirt, and we're both in our grass fields today, and we're going to be talking about let's we're to the fall. Folks are starting to cut their sorghum Sudan, all these things that I know absolutely nothing about. So I'm really excited. Do you want to start with cutting height?
Hey, so right on. First thing we have to do is cut it. So, pearl millets, sorghum Sudan grass, there are differences, folks. So, I just example yesterday. So, I cut alfalfa a week ago. I'm cutting my alfalfa about 3 inches high. Good cutting height for alfalfa to get nice regrowth. Don't get a lot of ash and trash up in your hay,
Yep.
not clipping rocks, all those kind of things. So, literally moved into some sorghum Sudan grass last night. Brachytic dwarf sorghum Sudan grass. So there are differences, folks. I left my cutting height at 3 inches for brachytic dwarf sorghum Sudan, and here's why. So when we talk about brachytic dwarf, let's just give a quick explanation of what that means,
Yeah,
right?
I was going to ask.
Yeah, so brachytic basically shortens the inner nodes between leaves. So we produce a shorter statured plant that generally tillers more, most of the time has a nice wider leaf. So we still get very, very good dry matter production. It's just a shorter plant, more compact. Nodes are closer to each other, shorter. So when the nodes are closer to each other, we can get two nodes, sometimes three nodes within 3 inches from the base of the plant or from the ground. And why that's important is because time and time again, studies and experiences have said that if you can leave two nodes above the ground, you will get better regrowth potential and faster regrowth. So that's become the industry accepted standard, two nodes above the ground. So brachytic dwarf, I can go out there. I've done this measurement a number of times. I get 3 inches of growth, stubble height 3 inches, usually 2 to 3 nodes in that range. Now, you have to know what type of product you purchased and what you planted. Most of the time, you will, if you've raised enough sorghum Sudan grass, you'll know once you get out there. This is a brachytic dwarf. It's not that tall compared to a standard product. The standard products, which get taller, therefore the nodes are a little farther apart, and you have to cut higher to capture two nodes. So, with that being said, I literally clipped across. I have 19 entries in a test plot. And I went through there yesterday and I cut the first pass at 3 inches, second pass at 5 inches, third pass at 7 inches. And we're going to do a little regrowth study as well. So we can show and kind of give people the visual of what that looks like and how it impacted the regrowth. So as I went back through the plot, I have standard height products that got cut too short on the first pass, maybe even the second pass. And I went through and counted nodes. So two nodes above the ground. You kind of need to know if you're doing a brachytic dwarf for a standard height product.
What's the uh we're talking a lot about two nodes. What's
Yeah.
the physiological component that makes two nodes necessary? Now I'm
There,
coming at this from I'm a West Coast Timothy guy and 4 inch stubble height because Timothy has a quorum in the base of that stem where it stores sugar. And if you cut it, you're robbing that plant of energy. So you're robbing the plant of the sugar stores. Is this the same thought process, or is this some other physiological thing that I don't know about?
so from a physiological standpoint, there are going to be some stored energy. There is going to be some stored energy in that stem. But from the corn part that you made the comment on, I would have to say I'm not really sure exactly if it's that component, but I do know that every time we clip that plant off at those node junctions, it throws more tillers and more stems, if you will, from that. So if you get a couple of nodes, you're going to have more stems shoot just automatically. There are going to be some that come from shoots at the base, kind of a little bit like an alfalfa plant, but we're talking legumes and grass, so it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. So
But
what I'm hearing
but
you
a,
say is that the growth point is in that bottom portion of the stem.
The growth point is technically going to be somewhat in that bottom portion, but it's just a weird creature. Because we're going to get shoots that come from the base of that plant, literally below those nodular node roots.
Yep.
And we're going to get new shoots and stems that come out of those node places. And I've actually seen times where you cut just right above a node, maybe an inch or two above it, and you'll get 3 or 4 stems just from that node that take off. So they get very prolific once you cut them. So that's a little bit of it. To be complete plant physiology educated, you caught me on that one.
Okay.
Which is okay.
Yeah.
To contrast, so you have brachytic dwarf plants, and then you have the standard height plants that would generally get 10, 12 foot tall.
Cool.
The recommendation I'm talking about right now with a 3-inch cutting height versus a 6-inch, we're talking about a 45 to 50 day cutting interval from emergence. Okay, so if you happen to let that plant stand out there longer, let's say 55, 60 days before you went to cut it, you need to re-investigate, I'm going to say readdress where those 2 nodes are at if you think you want some regrowth to come back. Because over time, those nodes will stretch just a little bit. So those lower nodes, instead of being 2 nodes and 3 inches, maybe now it's 4.5 inches. But you've accumulated a lot more dry matter on top. And depending on where you're at in the US and your growing season, and if you caught that plant before it tried to go reproductive, again, you're going to have better regrowth potentials. So those are a couple things about cutting height on sorghum Sudan grasses. Then we get into this discussion on pearl millets. The pearl millet is going to be exactly like you described your Timothy, where that growing point literally is going to start moving up into that stem. So if guys, again, you go out after a pearl millet stand at 45 days and you leave it set at 2 or 3 inches like you normally cut your alfalfa or another crop, maybe they aren't doing their grass any favor either and they're cutting it too short.
Yep.
You will have a poor experience on regrowth and not be a satisfied customer. So 5 inches, 6 inches would be suggested for pearl millet, again, depending on if you're at, say, 40 or 45 days after emergence or 60 days. You can cut the stem lengthwise and try to find where that's at, but you be out there cutting stems for a half hour to try to find an average of where to set your cutter. Just cut it at 5 or 6 inches and go to town. It's going to be a lot better than scalping it, I can tell you that. And interestingly enough, John, we have a follower of the Hay Kings podcast named Kyle in Nebraska, and he will literally send me pictures every time he goes out to cut pearl millet just to show and to share with everybody. Here's what the growing point looks like. Here's how you do it. And it's kind of fun that people will follow that and love to share and educate when they're not even on the platform like we are today.
I need to go find that because I have some second cutting pearl millet that I'm going to knock down tomorrow. Now, I have let's maybe put a bow tie on this. I have no expectation of taking another cutting.
Right.
There's no fences, so I'm not going to graze it. We're going to have a frost in the next month. It's going to freeze before it grows again.
Yep, absolutely.
Can I take that right down to the dirt?
You should be able to take it right down as close as you want to without risking rocks and ash.
Yep, gotcha.
Or other tools that you've lost off the toolbox that might still be out there.
I don't have any 9/16 or 10 millimeter wrenches laying out in fields anywhere.
Once they start growing, it's going to be a bumper crop, isn't it? So cutting height, pearl millet, sorghum Sudan grass. Well, since we're talking about cutting height, let's talk a little bit about grazing height as well, and just add another snippet on there. So for people that are grazing, generally, we like to see these sorghum Sudan grasses, pearl millets, get to 18 to 24 inches. There's multiple reasons. Some of it, if it's still not aggressively rooted well, they can probably graze down and start pulling plants out of the ground if you're too fast to get there. Second thing would be is we can hit some really rapid growth patterns in there and have on sorghum Sudans hay grazers, you could have a prussic acid issue, where we have cell membranes rupturing because that plant's trying to grow so rapidly in that small of a stage. Now, so our general recommendation is 18 to 24 inches before we start grazing. And then I would suggest that you're going to graze that thing whenever you need to get out there. A lot of people are turning livestock in at 35, 40 inches, sometimes even 4 or 5 feet. But we're going to graze that down. I usually tell people, top of your boot, don't make them act like they're hungry. But you get to boot top 8, 10 inches. It's a nice place to rotate and get them out. Although you could force them to eat down to within 2 nodes if you felt like you wanted to. But I think literally you start making them get that aggressive, they're going to start walking the fence and making noise, and probably not going to be the best day.
You're going to have cow problems. Yep.
Yeah, you could have fence problems. So anyway, from a cutting height standpoint on some of these warm season annuals, those are a few tips that we know, and how we try to guide people down the right road for acceptable and or better experiences with regrowth. And just like anything else, the less wheel traffic you can put on that crop, the better you are as well.
Alrighty. So can I kind of summarize and confirm here as to what I just heard?
Absolutely.
All right. So 2 nodes. That's my big takeaway from this is 2 nodes, whether it's 3 inches for a brachytic dwarf variety or
correct. Or you
Or-
get into your higher cutting height for something that does not have that trait. Absolutely.
I promise I didn't disappear. Yeah, so sorry. You finished my sentence for me. Getting up into that 5, 6, 7 inches for more traditional varieties with longer internodes, that space between where the leaves come off the stem.
Yep.
And on the grazing side, you want to get some growth and then graze it down, but don't graze it too hard. Right.
I would say you're going to know when you're getting to that point. Their cows are going to let you know. Or goats or sheep. You shouldn't exclude.
The base of that stem isn't as palatable? Is that, or sorry, that was just a random question that came in. Is there a reason they're going to start pushing fences if they have?
I would say, well, so then we could get into a whole nother discussion and start talking about conventional products without the BMR trait or products that have a BMR midrib, the brown midrib. They will take a brown midrib and literally eat it to the dirt because it's higher palatability, less lignin,
higher digestibility,
tastes sweeter, higher digestibility.
We know in the forage testing, like if you're looking at a forage test and the total digestible nutrients is higher, their dry matter intake is higher too. They eat more good hay than they will bad hay.
Absolutely. So yes, they will probably go through it quicker, and they could eat it right down to. And I've actually have pictures of guys sent me today. The cows are taking it right down to the dirt. And you're like, okay. So yes, those are some very key pieces.
All right. Well, let's put a bow tie on it right there and call it good. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for joining the Hay Kings Connections here.
Yeah. Folks wanting more information, Mr. Jackson, where should they go?
Well, they could either go to the Cropland website at www.cropland.com with no D at the end, by the way. Or they could follow me on some social media platforms as well at the Forage Fanatic. So
perfect.
Join along.
And then, of course, if you know about the Hay Kings Connections, we also have the Hay Kings podcast that you can listen to on the go. And if you're not in the group already, I don't even know how you found out about all this, but there's a pretty good sized Facebook group that's a great place to learn and connect and network. And then, of course, hay-kings.com. If you want some merchandise, that'd be great. That's a good way to support these efforts. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.